Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the broken communication array one more time. 20 years. 20 years since the colony ship had left him behind on mining station Omega-7. 20 years since he'd seen another human face, heard another human voice, or felt the touch of another person. The station floated in the empty darkness between two dead stars, a metal tomb that he'd somehow turned into a home. He'd survived because humans were stubborn, because humans didn't know when to quit, because humans could find hope even in the darkest corners of space. His daily routine never changed. Wake up, check the life support systems, tend to the hydroponic gardens he'd built from spare parts, fix whatever was breaking down today, sleep, repeat. The loneliness had nearly driven him mad in the first few years. But humans adapt. That's what they do. Marcus had taught himself to find joy in small things. The way the tomatoes in Bay 3 were finally turning red. The successful repair of a mining drone that had been dead for a decade. The music files he'd discovered in an old computer core, songs from Earth that nobody had listened to in centuries. Today started like any other day. The temperature regulator in Section C was acting up again. Marcus grabbed his toolkit and headed down the empty corridors, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He'd long ago stopped trying to fill the quiet with his own voice. Talking to yourself for 20 years gets old fast. The station had been designed for a crew of 50. Now it was just him and the ghosts of better days. He passed the recreation room where miners once played cards and told stories. The cafeteria where they'd complained about the food. The observation deck where young couples had stolen moments together under the stars. Marcus shook his head. No point dwelling on the past. He had work to do. The temperature regulator was an easy fix. Just a worn coupling that needed replacing. He had thousands of spare parts salvaged from the sections of the station he'd shut down to save power. Waste nothing. Make do with what you have. Human Survival 101. As he worked, his mind wandered to Earth. Did it still exist? Had humanity spread across the galaxy like they'd always dreamed, or had they destroyed themselves like the pessimists predicted? He'd never know. The nearest human settlement was 15 light years away, and his last working shuttle had died 8 years ago. A strange vibration ran through the station's hull. Marcus froze. In 20 years, he'd learned every sound this place made, every groan of metal, every hiss of air recyclers, every hum of generators. This was different. This was new. He rushed to the command center, his heart pounding. The ancient sensors were picking up something impossible. A ship. Not human by its energy signature, but definitely a ship. And it was approaching fast. Marcus's hands trembled as he activated the docking bay systems that hadn't been used in 2 decades. First contact protocols flooded back into his memory. Stay calm. Show no aggression. Represent humanity with dignity. But after 20 years alone, he wasn't sure he remembered how to talk to anyone, let alone an alien species. The ship was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Curves and angles that seemed to shift depending on the viewing angle. A hull that shimmered with colors that didn't exist in the human visual spectrum. It docked with surprising gentleness, adapting to the station's primitive coupling system like water flowing into a container. Marcus stood at the airlock, wearing his best, only, functioning environment suit. His reflection in the metal door showed a man aged by solitude. Gray streaking through black hair, lines carved by years of struggle, eyes that had seen too many sunrises alone. The airlock cycled. Marcus held his breath. She stepped through like a dream made real. Humanoid but clearly not human, skin that seemed to contain starlight, eyes with pupils that swirled like galaxies. Hair that moved as if underwater, defying the station's artificial gravity. She wore something that might have been clothing or might have been part of her body, shifting between states like quantum uncertainty made visible. For 20 years, Marcus had imagined this moment. meeting another sentient being, making contact, having someone to talk to. He'd prepared speeches, jokes, profound statements about the nature of existence. What came out was, "Hi." She tilted her head, studying him with those impossible eyes. When she spoke, her voice was like music played on instruments that didn't exist. "You are alone." Not a question, a statement. "Yes," Marcus managed. For a long time." She moved into the station with fluid grace, examining everything with the curiosity of a scientist and the wonder of a child. Marcus followed, suddenly aware of how shabby everything must look. Patches welded over patches, systems held together with determination and prayer. The smell of recycled air and old metal. "You survived," she said, running fingers that weren't quite solid along a wall panel. "Your species abandons you, leaves you in the void between dead stars, and you survive." "Humans are stubborn," Marcus said, finding his voice. "We don't give up easily." She turned those galaxy eyes on him. "Show me." So he did. He showed her the hydroponic gardens that shouldn't have worked but did. The jury-rigged life support systems that had kept him alive against all odds. The mining drones he'd reprogrammed to scout for resources on distant asteroids. The solar collectors he'd built from scrap to supplement the failing reactor. With each innovation, each desperate solution to an impossible problem, her interest grew. She asked questions that showed a deep understanding of technology, but also a fascination with something beyond the mere mechanics. "Your species," she said as they stood in the observation deck, looking out at the void. "They are all like this?" "Like what?" "Refusing to accept defeat. Finding solutions where none exist. Surviving where survival is impossible." Marcus thought about it. "I guess so. It's just, what we do. When things get tough, we get creative. When we're knocked down, we get back up. It's nothing special." She made a sound that might have been laughter. "Nothing special. You transform a tomb into a garden. You make the impossible possible through will alone. You face the infinite dark and choose to live. Your species knows something mine has forgotten." "What's that?" "How to hope." She moved closer, and Marcus realized he could feel warmth radiating from her, like standing near a star. "My people," she continued, "we have everything. Technology beyond your imagination, power to reshape reality, immortality or close enough, but we are dying." "Dying? How?" "We have forgotten how to struggle, how to fight, how to care whether we live or die. We have solved every problem, conquered every challenge, and in doing so, we have lost ourselves." Her form flickered, becoming more solid, more real. "We need teachers. We need those who remember what it means to fight for survival." Marcus laughed, surprising himself. "And you want humans to teach you? We're barely out of our own solar system. We can't even take care of our own planets properly." "Yes," she said simply. "That is why you are perfect." She reached out, her hand becoming solid enough to touch his face. The contact sent electricity through him, not painful, but awakening something he'd thought dead. "I have searched for someone like you. Someone who embodies what my species has lost. Someone who can teach us to live again. I don't understand. You traveled between stars to find a broken-down miner on a dead station? I traveled between stars to find a human who refused to die, who built hope from nothing, who proved that life is more than mere existence." Her other hand joined the first, framing his face. "I need you to come with me, to teach my people what you have taught yourself, to show them that survival is not about technology or power, but about will." Marcus's mind raced. "Leave the station?" After 20 years, it was home. Broken, desperate, lonely home, but home nonetheless. But the chance to see the stars, to have purpose again, to not be alone. What about humanity? My people. Your example will save both our species. My people will remember how to live. Your people will gain allies with the power to ensure they never face extinction." She stepped back, her form shifting again. "But the choice is yours. Stay in your garden tomb, or help me plant new gardens among the stars." Marcus looked around the command center, at the patches and repairs, at the blinking lights he'd kept running through sheer determination, at the 20 years of solitude made manifest in metal and recycled air. Then he looked at her, at the possibility she represented, at the chance to matter again. "When do we leave?" She smiled, and it was like watching a nebula being born. "First, you must prepare. My people will test you, challenge you. They will not believe that a single human can teach them anything. You must be ready to show them what your species truly is." "How do I prepare for that?" "By being yourself. By showing them what 20 years alone taught you. By refusing to break no matter what they throw at you." She moved toward the airlock. "I will return in 7 of your days. Gather what you need. Say goodbye to this place. And prepare to show the galaxy what it means to be human." "Wait," Marcus called out. "I don't even know your name." She paused at the threshold between his world and hers. "I am Lyra Lay of the Eternal Throne, first seeker of the dying light, herald of the last dawn." Her form shifted one more time, becoming something that hurt to perceive directly. "But you may call me Hope." Then she was gone, leaving Marcus alone again, but not lonely. Not anymore. 7 days. He had 7 days to prepare for the impossible, to get ready to teach immortals how to be mortal, to show beings of unimaginable power what it meant to be weak and refuse to surrender. Marcus looked at his reflection in the dark screen of a dead monitor. 20 years had aged him, marked him, changed him, but they hadn't broken him. And if a broken-down miner from Earth could survive 20 years in hell, maybe he could teach the gods themselves how to live. He got to work. There was much to do, and time was short. But that was okay. Humans worked best under pressure. It's just what they do. Marcus didn't sleep that first night. How could he? After 20 years of solitude, the universe had suddenly opened up before him like a flower blooming in fast forward. He wandered the station's corridors, seeing them with new eyes. This wasn't just his tomb anymore. It was his testimony, proof of what humans could do when pushed to the edge. By dawn, or what passed for dawn on a station that manufactured its own day-night cycle, he had a plan. 7 days to prepare to meet beings who had conquered death itself. 7 days to pack 20 years of survival into something he could show, teach, demonstrate. 7 days to represent humanity. No pressure. He started with the obvious: inventory. Marcus had kept meticulous records over the years, partly for his sanity, partly because that's what humans did. They documented, they recorded, they left marks that said, "I was here. I survived." The command center became his war room. Screens that had shown nothing but station diagnostics for decades now displayed lists, plans, schedules. He pulled up every piece of human culture stored in the station's databases: music, literature, art, history. If he was going to teach aliens about humanity, he needed to remember what humanity was. Day 2 was for the gardens. If anything showed the human spirit, it was the hydroponic bay. Marcus had built it from nothing. No seeds, no soil, no hope of resupply. Just determination and the knowledge that humans had been growing food in impossible places since the dawn of agriculture. He'd started with the emergency rations, carefully extracting seeds from freeze-dried vegetables. The first attempts had failed, and the second, and the 10th. But humans didn't stop at 10 failures. They went to 11, 12, 100 if necessary. Now, 20 years later, the bay was a green oasis in the metal desert. Tomatoes climbed jury-rigged trellises made from cable housings. Potatoes grew in containers that used to hold mining explosives. There was even a small apple tree, stunted and strange from the artificial environment, but producing fruit nonetheless. Marcus documented everything: the failures, the breakthroughs, the day he'd cried over the first successful tomato, the time he'd nearly given up and almost vented the whole bay into space, the moment he'd tasted fresh food for the first time in 5 years and remembered what hope tasted like. Day 3 was for the engineering miracles. Every system on the station was a testament to human stubbornness. The life support system should have failed 15 years ago. The reactor should have gone critical a decade back. The hull should have breached from micrometeorite impacts long before now. But humans had this annoying habit of not accepting "should have" as an answer. Marcus recorded video tutorials of his repairs: how to keep an atmospheric processor running with half its components missing, how to balance a fusion reactor using manual controls and instinct, how to patch a hull breach with nothing but cafeteria trays and determination. Each solution was insane by any rational standard. Each one had worked because it had to. He found himself talking as he recorded, his voice rough from disuse but growing stronger, explaining not just the how, but the why, the moment of desperation that led to each innovation, the thought process that said, "This is impossible, but let's try it anyway," the human logic that put survival above sanity. Day 4 brought an unexpected challenge. The station's AI, dormant for 15 years since its last circuits failed, suddenly flickered to life, just for a moment, just long enough to speak. Mission parameter: ensure human survival. Status: success. Recommendation: continue. Then it died again, this time for good. But Marcus understood. Even the machines humans built carried that spark, that refusal to quit. The AI had held on for 15 years past its expiration date to deliver one last message, one last confirmation that the mission, survival, had been achieved. He added it to his documentation, proof that humans didn't just survive themselves, but inspired their creations to do the same. Day 5 was for selection. What do you take to represent your entire species? Marcus had limited space in whatever transport Lyrelay would provide. He needed to choose carefully. The obvious choices: samples from the garden, seeds and cuttings that proved life found a way, technical schematics of his improvements, evidence of human ingenuity, cultural archives, though he suspected beings who could travel between stars had access to all of human history already. The less obvious choices: his journal, 20 years of thoughts, fears, hopes, dreams, the raw human experience of isolation and survival. His toolkit, worn smooth from use, each tool an extension of his will to live. The music player he'd repaired 17 times because humans needed beauty even in hell. And the probably stupid choice: the teddy bear. He'd found it in the quarters of a family that had evacuated with the others, left behind like him. He'd nearly thrown it out a dozen times. But in the darkest nights, when the weight of solitude threatened to crush him, he'd held it. A reminder that humans needed comfort, that strength included knowing when you were weak. It went in the pack. Day 6 was for goodbye. Marcus walked every corridor one last time, touched every surface he'd repaired, said farewell to the gardens that had kept him alive and sane. He sealed sections properly this time, not just abandoning them to save power, but closing them with respect. This station had been his enemy, his prison, his salvation, and his home. It deserved a proper farewell. In the observation deck, he stood for hours watching the void between dead stars, the same view for 20 years. He'd memorized every distant speck of light, named constellations that no one else would ever see, tracked the slow dance of asteroids in the dark. "Thank you," he said to the station, to the void, to whatever force had kept him alive when logic said he should have died. "I'll make it worth it. I promise." Day 7 came too fast and too slow. Marcus waited in the docking bay, his pack beside him, wearing his least patched jumpsuit. He'd even managed a shower and a shave, though his reflection still showed a man marked by solitude. Lyralay's ship arrived exactly when she'd promised. Beings who conquered time itself were apparently punctual. The docking was as smooth as before, and when the airlock opened, she stood there looking exactly as impossible as he remembered. "You are ready," she said. Again, not a question. "As ready as 20 years can make me," Marcus replied, shouldering his pack. She gestured for him to follow. The inside of her ship defied human understanding. Corridors that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions, rooms that were bigger inside than outside, technology that looked more like art, or maybe art that functioned as technology. "Your minds cannot fully process our architecture," Lyralai explained as Marcus tried not to stumble while walking through an impossible space. "Your senses will adapt. Humans always adapt." She led him to a chamber that felt more real than the rest. Solid walls he could understand. A viewport showing stars in configurations he recognized. A chair that looked almost human in design. "For your comfort," she said. "The journey will take 3 of your days. You should rest, eat, prepare yourself mentally. My people—" She paused, her form flickering through several states. "They have forgotten kindness, along with struggle. They may not be gentle in their testing." "I've survived worse than unkind aliens," Marcus said, trying for humor. She didn't smile. "No, you have not." That killed the joke pretty effectively. As the ship departed, Marcus watched his station shrink in the viewport. 20 years of his life, reduced to a speck of metal in the void. Then gone, swallowed by the dark between dead stars. "Second thoughts?" Lyralai asked. "No," Marcus said honestly. "Just saying goodbye. Your species values connections, even to places that caused pain. Especially to places that caused pain. They're the ones that made us who we are." She studied him with those galaxy eyes. "Yes, that is what we have forgotten. That pain has purpose. That struggle has meaning. That connections matter even when they hurt." The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Lyralai taught him about her people, the ethereals, they called themselves, beings who had transcended physical form millennia ago, who could manipulate reality with thought, who had solved every problem except the most important one, why to keep existing. "We do not die," she explained. "We simply fade, lose cohesion, dissipate into the background energy of the universe. It is not painful. That is the problem. We have forgotten pain, so we have forgotten its opposite. We have forgotten struggle, so we have forgotten achievement. We have forgotten death, so we have forgotten life. And you think humans can remind you? I have studied your history. Every crisis that should have destroyed you made you stronger. Every limitation you faced became a challenge to overcome. You weaponize your weaknesses. You turn disadvantages into strengths. You look at the impossible and say, 'Hold my beer.'" Marcus laughed. "You've really done your research. I've watched your species for centuries, waiting for the right moment, the right human, one who embodied everything that makes you what you are." She moved closer, her presence warm like standing in sunlight. 20 years alone would have destroyed most beings. You built a garden. "I built a lot more than that," Marcus said quietly. "Yes, you built hope from nothing. That is what we need to learn." On the 3rd day, they arrived. The ethereal homeworld, if it could be called that, existed partially outside normal space. Marcus's eyes couldn't quite focus on it. His brain kept trying to interpret what he was seeing and giving up. "Do not try to understand with your senses," Lyralai advised. "Feel it instead." Marcus closed his eyes and immediately understood. It wasn't a world. It was an idea of a world. a place held together by thought and will, constantly shifting based on the desires of its inhabitants. Beautiful beyond description, terrifying in its perfection. "No wonder you're dying," he breathed. "There's nothing to push against. Yes, we have conquered reality so thoroughly that we have nothing left to define ourselves against. No boundaries to cross, no limits to exceed, no challenges to overcome." The ship docked at something that might have been a city, or might have been a single building, or might have been both. Marcus followed Lyrali through spaces that reformed themselves as they walked, adapting to their presence. Other ethereals began to appear, beings of light and thought, each unique but all sharing that sense of disconnection. They watched Marcus with curiosity, confusion, and something that might have been hunger, a starving people looking at food they'd forgotten how to eat. Finally, they arrived at what Lyrali called the council chamber. 7 beings waited there, each more impossible than the last. Power radiated from them like heat from a forge. These were creatures that could reshape galaxies with a thought, and they were all staring at Marcus like he was the most interesting thing they'd seen in eons. "This is the human?" one asked, its voice like cosmic radiation translated into sound. "This is Marcus Chen," Lyrali said. "Survivor of Omega-7, builder of gardens in the void, proof that life is choice, not chance." "He is so small," another observed. "So limited, so fragile." "Yes," Lyrali agreed. "That is his strength." The central being, larger and brighter than the others, leaned forward. When it spoke, Marcus felt the words in his bones. "You claim this creature can teach us to live again? This mayfly that will be dust before we finish a single thought?" "I do." "Then let him prove it." The being focused on Marcus, and the weight of its attention was like standing under a waterfall of stars. "Show us, human. Show us what you know that we have forgotten." Marcus stood there, a man in a patched jumpsuit facing beings that could unmake him with a thought. 20 years of solitude had prepared him for many things, but not this. Not standing before gods and telling them they'd forgotten how to tie their shoes. But then he remembered the apple tree, growing in a mining station, impossible, defiant, alive. He smiled. "All right," Marcus Chen, last survivor of Omega-7, said to the assembled gods. "Let me tell you about the day I decided not to die." The council chamber fell silent. Marcus could feel the weight of their attention, beings who had existed since before Earth's sun was born, waiting for wisdom from a creature they could blink out of existence. But that was the thing about humans. They performed best when the odds were impossible. 20 years ago, Marcus began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "I woke up to silence. The colony ship was gone. Everyone I knew, everyone I'd worked with, lived with, laughed with, vanished into the dark. The station's computers told me I'd been left behind by accident, a clerical error, a glitch in the evacuation protocol." He pulled out his journal, worn and patched like everything else from the station. "I had food for maybe 6 months. Water for 4 if I rationed. The reactor was already failing. Life support was running at 60%. By any logical calculation, I had maybe a year before something critical failed, and I died." The ethereals watched, unmoving. Marcus couldn't read their expressions. Did beings of pure thought even have expressions? But he felt their interest like static electricity in the air. "The first day I cried, the second day I screamed, the third day I tried to drink myself to death with the mining crew's hidden whiskey stash." He smiled at the memory. "Failed at that too. Turns out it's hard to die when your body wants to live. By the 4th day, I had a choice. Give up or get up, die or try. And here's the thing about humans. We're really bad at giving up. It's like a genetic defect. Tell us something's impossible, and we take it as a challenge." Marcus opened his pack and pulled out a small container. Inside, a single seed rested on worn cloth. This is from the apple tree. Grew it from a seed I found in a 17-year-old lunchbox. Took me 8 years and 43 failed attempts. Everyone knows you can't grow apple trees in space. No soil, wrong light spectrum, recycled air full of industrial pollutants. Impossible. He held up the seed. But impossible is just another word for haven't figured it out yet. The lead ethereal leaned forward. You speak of physical survival. We have no such concerns. We do not hunger. We do not thirst. We do not die from lack of resources. No, Marcus agreed. You die from lack of purpose, from lack of challenge, from forgetting why survival matters in the first place. A ripple went through the assembled beings. Anger? Curiosity? Marcus couldn't tell. You want to know what I can teach you? He put the seed away and pulled out something else. The teddy bear. Worn, patched, one eye missing. This belonged to a little girl. She left it behind in the evacuation. For 5 years I ignored it. Just clutter, taking up space. But on year 6, in the middle of what I call the dark time, I found it again. Marcus held the bear carefully, remembering. I was going to space it, open the airlock and throw it into the void with all the other useless things. But I couldn't. Know why? Because it mattered to someone once. Because a little girl had loved it. Because throwing it away would mean admitting that love didn't matter. That connections didn't matter. That nothing mattered except bare survival. He looked directly at the lead ethereal. That's when I understood. Survival isn't about living. It's about remembering why life matters. It's about connections. To people, to places, to stupid stuffed animals that remind you that you're more than just a biological machine processing nutrients and oxygen. Sentiment. One of the ethereals dismissed. Emotional attachment to objects. How does this help us? Because you've disconnected from everything, Marcus shot back, surprising himself with his boldness. You've solved all your problems, so you've got nothing to fight for. You've transcended physical form, so you've forgotten what it feels like to hurt, to struggle, to overcome. You've become perfect, and perfection is just another word for stagnation. Silence. Then Lirelai spoke. Show them the gardens. Marcus pulled out his tablet, one of the few electronic devices that still worked reliably. The screen lit up with images of his hydroponic bay. Every plant in here represents a failure. The tomatoes? Killed 17 batches before I got the nutrient mix right. The potatoes? Accidentally poisoned myself twice trying to remove the industrial chemicals from the growing medium. The apple tree? 8 years. 8 years of failure before one seed took root. He swiped through images. Plants growing in impossible places, vegetables thriving in recycled waste containers. Life blooming in the heart of a dead station. But here's the important part. I didn't keep trying because I'm special. I kept trying because that's what humans do. We fail. We learn. We fail better. We keep going not because we're strong, but because we're too stupid to know when we're beaten. You celebrate ignorance? An ethereal asked, its tone unreadable. I celebrate refusing to accept defeat, Marcus corrected. You know what your problem is? You've never failed. Not really. You've never had to claw your way back from nothing. Never had to build hope from scrap metal and determination. You've forgotten that life isn't about winning. It's about getting back up after you lose. The lead ethereal rose, its form expanding until it filled Marcus's vision. You speak boldly for such a limited creature. Perhaps a demonstration is in order. The chamber dissolved. Marcus found himself standing in the void of space, stars wheeling around him. He should have been dead instantly. No suit, no air, no protection from the absolute zero of vacuum. But he could breathe. He could think. An illusion? He asked. Reality is what we make it. The ethereal's voice came from everywhere. You survived 20 years in isolation. Impressive for a human. But can you survive this? The stars went out. Not dimmed, not distant. Gone. Marcus floated in absolute darkness. No light, No sound, no sensation except his own heartbeat. This wasn't the darkness of the station at night. This was the darkness before creation. The darkness that would come after everything ended. Marcus felt it pressing against his mind. The weight of nothingness. The terror of truly being alone, not just separated from others, but separated from existence itself. This was how the ethereals experienced their fading. This was the death they feared. For a moment he almost gave in, almost let the darkness take him. Then he remembered the apple tree. In his mind, Marcus built it piece by piece. The improvised planter made from a chemical storage tank. The grow lights cobbled together from mining equipment. The nutrient system that recycled wastewater into life. He remembered the first green shoot, the first leaves, the first flower that promised fruit in the depths of space. Light bloomed in the darkness. Not from outside, but from within. The light of memory, of connection, of refusing to let the void win. How? The ethereal's voice held something new. Surprise? Respect? Because the darkness isn't empty, Marcus said, and suddenly he was back in the chamber, the assembled beings staring at him. It's full of potential, every seed that might grow, every connection that might form, every tomorrow that might be better than today. You see void, I see garden soil. The ethereals exchanged looks, or what passed for looks between beings of pure thought. He resisted the nihil, one said. A human, a mortal. He looked into the absolute void and created light through will alone. Not will, Marcus corrected. Hope, and not alone. I carried 20 years of memories, 20 years of failures and successes, 20 years of reasons to keep going. That's what you've forgotten. Life isn't a solo performance. It's a connection between past and future, between self and other, between what is and what might be. The lead ethereal contracted back to a more manageable size. You interest us, Marcus Chen. But interest is not enough. We need more than philosophy. We need practical application. How do we reclaim what we have lost? Marcus thought about it. How do you teach gods to be mortal? How do you show perfect beings the value of imperfection? You start by failing, he said finally. You pick something impossible, truly impossible, not just difficult, and you try to do it. When you fail, you learn. You try again. You fail better. You keep going until impossible becomes inevitable. We can reshape reality. Nothing is impossible for us. Really? Marcus grinned. Then try this. Try to grow a garden, not with your powers, not by reshaping matter with thought, but with tools and time and patience. Try to nurture something that might die. Try to create something that could fail. Try to care about something that doesn't matter. Silence stretched through the chamber. Then Lyrelai laughed, a sound like solar wind through cosmic strings. He challenges the Eternal Council to play in dirt. Is that not why you brought him? The lead ethereal asked her. To remind us of dirt, of limitation, of mortality? Yes, she said simply. To teach us that immortality without purpose is just a very long death. The council deliberated without words, communicating in ways Marcus couldn't perceive. He waited, holding his pack with its 20 years of evidence that humans didn't know how to quit. Finally, the lead ethereal spoke. We will try your way, human. We will attempt to grow these gardens, to fail, to learn, to remember what we have forgotten. It paused. But if we are to learn mortality, we need teachers. Will you stay? Will you help us remember how to be alive? Marcus thought about it. Stay among beings of unimaginable power, teaching them to play in dirt? Leave any chance of seeing another human to help aliens remember their humanity? On one condition, he said. We find others. Humans who've survived impossible situations, who've built hope from nothing, who can teach different lessons about what it means to be alive. I'm just one man with one story. Humanity has billions of stories. You need to hear them all. You would have us seek out more of your kind, learn from multiple perspectives? That's how humans learn. We share, we argue, we build on each other's ideas. One voice in the darkness is madness. Many voices together is civilization. The ethereals considered this. Then something shifted in the chamber's atmosphere. A sense of decision, of change beginning. Very well, the lead ethereal said. We will seek out your scattered kind. Those who survive where survival should be impossible. Those who build where building is futile. Those who hope where hope is madness. It focused on Marcus again. You will be the first, the teacher who taught teachers to teach, the gardener who planted the seed of our renewal. I'm just a guy who didn't die when he was supposed to, Marcus protested. Yes, Lyra Lee said, moving to stand beside him. That is exactly what we need to learn. Over the next months, Marcus established the first garden on the ethereal homeworld. It was a disaster. Beings who could create matter from thought couldn't understand why seeds sometimes didn't germinate. Who could manipulate time couldn't grasp why plants needed to grow at their own pace. Who had conquered death couldn't accept that sometimes, despite all your efforts, things died. But they learned. Oh, how they learned. The first successful tomato, after 38 failures, caused a celebration that rippled through dimensions Marcus couldn't perceive. The first flower that bloomed from seed to stem without any reality manipulation became a holy relic. The apple tree, grown from that single preserved seed, became a pilgrimage site for ethereals struggling to understand mortality. And they found other humans, survivors of disaster, builders of impossible things, people who had faced the void and planted flags. Each brought their own lessons. Each added to the growing understanding that life wasn't about power or permanence, but about connection and continuity. A year into the project, Marcus stood in a garden that couldn't exist. Ethereal plants mixing with earth varieties. Impossible colors growing beside ordinary green. Beings of pure thought kneeling in dirt, tending seedlings with more care than they'd shown for galaxies. Lyra Lee appeared beside him, her form more solid than before, more present, more alive. We are changing, she said, remembering substance, remembering limitation, remembering why existence matters. Good, Marcus said, checking the moisture level in a planter. Just remember, you can't rush it. Growth takes time. Time, she mused. Such a strange concept when you exist outside it. But in the garden, time has meaning. Seeds become plants. Plants become food. Food becomes life. Life becomes memory. Memory becomes hope. Now you're getting it, Marcus said with a smile. She was quiet for a moment, watching an ethereal, one of the most powerful beings in existence, carefully transplanting a pepper seedling. Marcus, she said finally, there is something I need you to do. What's that? She turned to him, and for the first time since they'd met, she looked truly vulnerable. I need you to teach me something harder than gardening, something more impossible than growing apple trees in space. What could be harder than teaching gods to play in dirt? She solidified completely, becoming more real than he'd ever seen her. Beautiful and terrible and wonderfully imperfect. I need you to teach me to be mortal, to accept limitation, to embrace ending, to be human. Marcus set down his watering can, really looking at her. This being who had traveled between stars to find him, who had saved not just him but possibly her entire species, who was asking for the hardest lesson of all. That's not something I can teach, he said gently. That's something you have to choose, every day, every moment. Choose to be limited, choose to be vulnerable, choose to maybe fail, maybe die, maybe lose everything, but also maybe live, really live. She nodded slowly. Then I choose. I choose mortality. I choose limitation. I choose... She paused, searching for the word. I choose hope over certainty. The transformation was subtle. She didn't become human. That was beyond even ethereal power or will, but she became more solid, more real, more bound to the moment instead of existing across all time. It hurts, she said with wonder. Choosing just one form, just one moment, just one possibility. Yeah, Marcus agreed. It does, but that's what makes it matter. She looked at him with eyes that now held only one galaxy instead of all of them. You know what to do, human. And he did. After 20 years alone, after teaching gods to garden, after showing the immortal the value of mortality, Marcus Chen knew exactly what to do. He took her hand, solid, warm, real, and led her to the apple tree. Their apple tree now. The impossible thing that had grown from nothing but determination and hope. First lesson, he said. Everything ends. That's not the tragedy. The tragedy is not beginning because you know it will end. So we begin anyway. We plant seeds knowing the tree will die. We build love knowing hearts will break. We create beauty knowing it will fade. Because the ending isn't the point. The point is everything that happens before. Around them, ethereals tended their gardens, learned to fail, learned to try again, learned that immortality meant nothing without the risk of loss. And in the space between dead stars, where Marcus Chen had spent 20 years learning to live, new lights began to shine. Not the cold light of distant suns, but the warm glow of civilizations learning to hope again. Learning that survival wasn't about lasting forever, but about making the time you had matter. The universe, it turned out, had been waiting for teachers, waiting for someone to remind it that existence wasn't about power or permanence, but about the courage to continue. About the audacity to grow gardens in the void, about the beautiful stupidity of hoping when hope made no sense. Humanity's gift to the cosmos wasn't technology or philosophy or art. It was simpler than that. It was the voice in the darkness that said, I'm still here, still trying, still failing, still growing, still hoping, and tomorrow I'll do it all again. And somewhere in the gardens of eternity, an apple tree grew. Impossible, defiant, alive. Proof that sometimes the smallest seed could change the universe. All it took was someone too stubborn to give up. All it took was being human.